Jake Morrison sat in the big white chair and looked across the long table. His hands rested flat on the smooth surface. The room was huge and bright with lights that came from everywhere at once. Around the table sat creatures that looked nothing like humans. The Zelthari delegate had purple skin and 6 arms. His name was Vexthon, and he spoke in a voice that sounded like grinding metal. Next to him sat a small fuzzy creature that looked like a teddy bear, but had sharp teeth. That was the Quillian trade representative. On the other side, a tall crystal being hummed like a broken radio. The Nexari always made that sound when they talked. Jake had been coming to these meetings for 3 years. Every time, the aliens wanted something from humanity. Every time, humans gave in to keep the peace. But today felt different. Vexton stood up on his 4 legs and pointed one of his 6 arms at Jake. "Human Morrison," he said in that awful grinding voice. "The Galaxy Council has made a decision about your colony world." Jake knew which world he meant. New Texas was a beautiful planet that humans had worked on for 10 years. They had turned the rocky desert into green farms that fed millions of people. 2 million humans now called it home. "The hegemony claims that New Texas sits in their territory," Vexthon continued. "The humans must leave, all of them. The world belongs to the hegemony now." The fuzzy Quillians squeaked in agreement. Yes, humans must pay for taking space. That was not theirs. Economic sanctions will follow if humans do not obey. The crystal being hummed louder. Consequences will come to those who refuse the wisdom of the council. Jake had heard this kind of talk before. The aliens always made demands and expected humans to just say yes. They treated humans like children who needed to be told what to do. But Jake remembered the message he got that morning. It came from Lisa Campbell, the head of Earth's colonial administration. The message was short and clear. "No more compromises, no more backing down, tell them we are done." Jake reached into his jacket and pulled out a white envelope. The seal was still unbroken. He placed it on the table in front of him but did not open it yet. "Let me understand this correctly," Jake said in a calm voice. "You want 2 million human beings to leave their homes. You want them to abandon the farms they built and the cities they created. You want them to give up everything they worked for." Vexthon made a sound like a saw cutting metal. "The Galaxy Council has spoken. Humans will obey or face punishment." The other aliens nodded and made their own agreement sounds. They looked pleased with themselves, like this was just another easy victory over the humans. Jake looked around the room. He had sat in this same chair so many times. He had listened to so many demands. He had watched other human diplomats nod and agree and promise to do whatever the aliens wanted. But not today. Jake broke the seal on the envelope and pulled out a single sheet of paper. He read it once, then looked up at the aliens. "I have here the official response from the United Colonies of Humanity," he said. The aliens leaned forward. They expected another human surrender. Jake stood up slowly. He was not a tall man, but something in the way he moved made the room feel smaller. The aliens stopped making their sounds and waited. "The answer is no," Jake said clearly. Vexthon's purple skin turned darker. "Explain this no, human. New Texas stays human. Our people stay in their homes. Our colonies remain ours." Jake's voice never got louder, but every word hit like a hammer. "Furthermore, humanity rejects all authority of the Galaxy Council over human affairs." The crystal, being's humming turned into a sharp whistle. "Humans cannot reject the Council. The Council rules all civilized species." Jake picked up his papers and put them in his briefcase. "Not anymore. As of this moment, humanity withdraws from all diplomatic relations with the Galaxy Council and every species represented here." The room exploded into noise. The Zelthari roared, the Quillians squeaked like a broken toy, and the Nexari's humming became a painful screech. Jake closed his briefcase with a sharp click that somehow cut through all the alien noise. "This meeting is over. Humanity is done talking." Vexthon slammed 4 of his 6 hands on the table. "Humans cannot survive alone. You need the Council. You need us." Jake looked at the purple alien for a long moment, then he smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Do we?" he asked. "I guess we'll find out. But here's what I think. I think you need us a lot more than we need you." He walked toward the door. Behind him, the aliens were making so much noise it sounded like a zoo at feeding time. At the door, Jake turned back one last time. "Oh, and one more thing. Any alien ship found in human space after today will be treated as hostile. Pass that message along." Then Jake Morrison, the last human ambassador to the Galaxy Council, walked out of the room. The door closed behind him with a soft sound that somehow felt final. In the big bright room, the aliens sat in shocked silence. For the first time in galactic history, a species had simply walked away from the council. No species had ever done that before. They had no idea what to do next. Outside the council chambers, Jake Morrison walked down the long hallway toward the docking bay where his ship waited. His steps echoed in the empty corridor. Soon all the human ships would be leaving. Soon humanity would stand alone. But Jake was not worried. He had seen what humans could do when they worked together. He had seen them turn dead rocks into garden worlds. He had seen them solve problems that the wisest aliens called impossible. The galaxy was about to learn something new about humanity. When humans said they were done, they meant it completely. 3 days after Jake Morrison walked out of the Galaxy Council, panic spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On the Zelthari homeworld, Emergency Counselor Nell Vash stood in the crisis center watching dozens of screens that showed nothing but bad news. "Report," Nell Vash demanded, his purple skin turning dark with stress. The technician, a younger Zelthari with only 4 arms, trembled as he spoke. "Sir, the human cargo ships have vanished. All of them. Every trade route that depended on human vessels is now empty." Nell Vash stared at the screens. Red warning lights blinked everywhere. "How many ships are we talking about?" 60% of all cargo traffic in the galaxy, sir. The humans controlled most of the shipping between star systems. Without them, goods cannot move. On another world, Trade Administrator Pipwell of the Quillian Commerce Guild sat in his office surrounded by broken dreams. The fuzzy little alien looked like he had not slept in days. His assistant brought him another cup of bitter calf, but Pipwell's hands shook too much to drink it. "Sir, the quarterly reports are in," his assistant squeaked nervously. Pipwell did not want to hear it, but he had to know. "Tell me." 90% of our trade income came from human merchants buying and selling goods through our stations. They brought materials from one end of the galaxy to the other. Now our stations sit empty. No cargo, no income, no future. The assistant placed a data pad on the desk. "Sir, without the humans, we face complete economic collapse within 30 days. Far away on Kepler Station, an industrial world that floated between 3 suns, Bill Watson was packing his tools. The big human engineer had worked at the antimatter production facility for 5 years. The complex machines that created the fuel for faster-than-light travel hummed around him as he worked. His alien partner, a crystalline Nixari named Zixoth, watched with growing panic. The crystal being's normal humming had become a high-pitched whine of fear. "Bill, you cannot leave," Zixoth said through the translation device. "The facility requires your knowledge. Without you, we cannot operate the antimatter generators." Bill looked up from his toolbox. He was a big man with gentle eyes, but those eyes were cold now. "Should have thought about that before you aliens decided to push us around. But the other species need the fuel. Ships across the galaxy depend on this facility." Bill walked over to the main control panel. It was covered with buttons and switches that only he truly understood. The aliens had always been happy to let humans do the hard technical work while they made the important decisions. "Watch and learn," Bill said. He placed his hand on a biometric scanner. The machine beeped and accepted his DNA signature. Then he entered a long code that locked down the entire facility. "The system is now sealed," Bill explained. "Only human DNA can unlock it. You want to run things without us? Good luck." Zixoth's humming became desperate. "Please, Bill, train someone to replace you. Show us how the machines work." Bill picked up his toolbox and headed for the door. "Nope. You had years to learn. You chose to treat us like servants instead of partners. This is what you get." Meanwhile, on Earth, President Helen Carter stood before the largest gathering of human representatives in history. The Colonial Assembly Hall was packed with delegates from 47 human worlds. The air buzzed with excitement and determination. "Fellow humans," President Carter began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. "For too long we have accepted the role of junior partners in galactic society. We built their stations, fixed their machines, and carried their goods across space. In return, they treated us like children who needed to be told what to do." The crowd murmured agreement. Many of the delegates had their own stories of alien arrogance and disrespect. Today begins a new chapter for humanity. We will no longer beg for scraps from the alien table. We will build our own future, on our own terms. The president gestured to a large screen that showed a map of human space. Operation Homecoming has begun. Every human working in alien territory is coming home. Every human ship is returning to human space. We are drawing a line around our worlds and saying this far and no further. The delegates rose to their feet as one, cheering and applauding. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would stand alone. In the depths of space, Admiral Rick Harrison commanded the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. Hundreds of ships spread out across dozens of star systems, all working toward the same goal. They were bringing humanity home. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we have confirmation from the Rigel sector. All human personnel have been evacuated from alien facilities. The last transport ship is heading home now." Admiral Harrison nodded. He was an old man who had served in space for 30 years. He had watched aliens treat humans like useful tools for too long. "What about the Vega system?" "Same story, sir. The humans who ran the mining operation have shut everything down and left. The aliens there are begging them to stay, but our people are following orders." The Admiral smiled. It was a hard smile, but satisfied. "Good. Let the aliens figure out how to run their own facilities for once." On his command ship, the Admiral looked out at the stars. Soon, all of human space would be defended by human ships. No alien vessel would enter without permission. No alien voice would tell humans what to do with their own worlds. The galaxy was learning a hard lesson. For centuries, they had taken human cooperation for granted. They thought humans would always be there to do the work and follow orders. They were wrong. As reports poured in from across the galaxy, one thing became clear. The aliens had made a terrible mistake. They had pushed humanity too far, and now they were paying the price. The great human withdrawal had begun, and nothing would ever be the same. 2 weeks had passed since humanity cut all ties with the Galaxy Council. The emergency session in the Great Council chamber had been going on for 3 days straight. The alien leaders who once sat proudly in their seats now looked desperate and afraid. Supreme Arbiter Velmash, the most powerful being in the galaxy, stood at the center of the room. His tall, thin body shook with rage and fear. Around him, the representatives of dozens of species argued and panicked. "Give me the military report," Velmash demanded. Warcast Throckmar of the Hegemony stepped forward. The massive alien was built like a tank, with thick armor plating and weapons grafted onto his arms, but even he looked defeated. "Supreme Arbiter, our fleets are grounded. The jump drive systems that allow faster-than-light travel have failed across the galaxy. Only the humans understood how to maintain them properly." Velmash's eyes went wide. "All of them? 90% of our ships cannot leave their home systems. The few that still work are breaking down daily. Without human technicians, we estimate total fleet failure within 1 month." The room erupted in panic. Species that had been enemies for centuries now faced the same terrible problem. Without faster-than-light travel, their mighty fleets were just expensive decorations floating in space. Far away on Prometheus Point Research Station, Dr. Amy Rodriguez packed her belongings into a small bag. She had been the head of quantum field research for 8 years. Her work had led to medical breakthroughs that saved millions of lives across the galaxy. Her research partner, Science Prime Kethel of the Vorthak, watched her pack with growing desperation. The insect-like alien's many eyes blinked rapidly, which meant he was very upset. "Amy, please reconsider. Kethel said through the translation device. Your departure will set back our medical research by decades. The quantum field applications you discovered could cure diseases that have plagued our species for generations. Amy looked up from her packing. She was a small woman with kind eyes, but those eyes were hard now. Funny how you never worried about saving lives when you were voting to steal our colonies. But the greater good of the galaxy depends on this research, Kethel insisted. Surely you can see past politics to the scientific benefits. Amy zipped up her bag and slung it over her shoulder. I spent 8 years sharing my knowledge freely. I taught your people everything I knew. In return, your government treated my species like troublesome children who needed to be controlled. She walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. You know what the real problem is, Kethel? You aliens never learn to think like humans. You follow rules and procedures, but you can't make those creative leaps that lead to real breakthroughs. Good luck trying to figure out quantum field theory without human intuition. As Amy left the station, Kethel stared at the complex equations on the wall. The mathematical formulas looked like ancient magic to him now. Without Amy's human mind to guide the research, he knew they would never understand the deeper principles. On the Nexari capital world, a planet made entirely of crystal formations, Chief Economist Harmony Node 77 ran calculations on massive crystal computers. The mathematical being existed as pure logic, but even logic could not solve the current crisis. The economic data was catastrophic. Every trade route showed massive losses. Agricultural worlds that depended on human farming knowledge faced starvation. Industrial centers that relied on human technical skills sat idle. Calculate probability of economic recovery without human participation. Harmony Node 77 commanded the crystal computers. The answer came back in flashing lights. 0% probability within acceptable time frame. The Nexari's crystalline structure dimmed with shock. Their entire civilization was built on mathematical precision and logical planning. They had calculated that humans were useful but replaceable. The math had been wrong. Back in the Galaxy Council chamber, more reports arrived every hour. The Quillian Commerce Guild reported that their trade stations were closing one by one. The Zelthari military admitted that their weapon systems were failing without human maintenance. Even the proud hegemony acknowledged that their vast empire was crumbling. Trade Administrator Pip Wells squeaked desperately, "We must send envoys to the humans. We must negotiate their return." "With what leverage?" Warcast Throckmar roared. "Our fleets cannot even reach human space. Our economy is in ruins. What do we have to offer?" The crystal being Harmony Node 77 hummed sadly. "The mathematical error is now clear. We calculated human value based on their military strength and political influence. We failed to account for their role as the fundamental support system of galactic civilization." Velmash slammed his fist on the council table. "How did we not see this? How did we become so dependent on one species?" An old Vorthak counselor, his insect wings drooping with age, spoke up. "Because we took them for granted. The humans never demanded respect. They never threatened us. They just quietly did the work that kept everything running." "And now?" Velmash asked, though he already knew the answer. "Now we learn what happens when you abuse the patience of a species that holds your civilization together." The chamber fell, silent. Outside the great windows they could see ships trying to dock at the station, but many of the docking systems were failing because the human technicians who maintained them were gone. Species that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years were learning a hard truth. Power did not just come from weapons and fleets. True power came from being needed, from being the ones who made everything else possible. The humans had been the quiet backbone of galactic society. Now that backbone was gone, and everything was falling apart. Supreme Arbiter Velmash looked around the chamber at the desperate faces of his fellow leaders. They had pushed humanity too far, and now they were paying a price none of them had imagined possible. "We need to bring them back," he said quietly. "Whatever it takes, we need to bring the humans back. But first, they had to figure out how to even reach human space with their broken fleets and failed technology. The galaxy's most powerful species had learned they were powerless without the humans they had taken for granted. 6 weeks after humanity cut all diplomatic ties, the Galaxy Council faced complete collapse. Supreme Arbiter Velmash stood before the largest diplomatic vessel ever built. The ship was called Harmony's Dream, and it had taken the combined resources of 12 species to construct it. "This is our last hope," Velmash told the assembled alien leaders. "We will go to Earth itself and beg the humans to return." Warcast Throckmar, his armor now dull and scratched from equipment failures, shook his massive head. "No species has ever humbled themselves like this before. We are the Galaxy Council. We do not beg." "Look around you," Velmash snapped. "Half. Our fleets are dead in space. Our trade routes are empty. Our colonies are starving. Pride will not save us now." The great ship launched with fanfare, but everyone knew it was a desperate move. On board were the most powerful beings in the galaxy, reduced to supplicants hoping for human mercy. The journey to Earth took 3 days with the ship's struggling engines. As they approached the solar system, the aliens saw something that made their hearts sink. Earth was surrounded by a massive defense fleet that had not been there before. Admiral Pete Sullivan commanded the Earth Defense Fleet from his flagship, the Terra's Shield. He was a veteran of the old border wars, a man who had fought aliens before and won. When his sensors detected the approaching alien vessel, he smiled grimly. "Incoming alien ship, this is Admiral Sullivan of the Earth Defense Fleet. You are not welcome in this system. Turn around immediately or be destroyed." On board Harmony's Dream, the alien leaders panicked. They had expected to be received with at least basic diplomatic courtesy. Instead, they faced the threat of annihilation. "Admiral Sullivan," Velmash transmitted back. "This is Supreme Arbiter Velmash of the Galaxy Council. We request permission to enter Earth space for urgent diplomatic discussions." There was a long silence. Then Admiral Sullivan's voice came back, cold and hard. "You have no authority in human space. You will wait at the edge of the system while we decide if you are worth our time." The most powerful beings in the galaxy were forced to wait like criminals outside a courthouse. For 3 days, Harmony's Dream sat at the edge of the solar system. The aliens watched human patrol ships circle them like sharks around wounded prey. Finally, a message came from Earth. President Helen Carter had agreed to meet with them, but only on human terms. The meeting would take place on Luna, Earth's moon, in a simple conference room with no ceremonial decorations. When the alien delegation finally landed on Luna, they were shocked by what they saw. The moon base had been transformed into a fortress. Human soldiers in advanced armor patrolled everywhere. Weapon systems tracked their every movement. The meeting room was small and plain. No grand throne for the Supreme Arbiter. No golden chairs for the species representatives. Just a simple table with human chairs on one side and alien chairs on the other. President Carter entered with Secretary of State Dan Murphy, who had been the human ambassador to the Rigel sector before the withdrawal. Both humans looked calm and confident, while the aliens fidgeted nervously. "You wanted to meet," President Carter said simply. "Talk." Velmash had prepared a grand speech about galactic cooperation and mutual benefit. Instead, he found himself stammering like a schoolchild. "President Carter, the Galaxy Council acknowledges that perhaps we were too hasty in our recent decisions. We would like to discuss the possibility of renewed diplomatic relations." President Carter leaned back in her chair. "You mean you want us to come back and fix all the problems you created for yourselves?" The alien leaders looked at each other desperately. Finally, Trade Administrator Pipwell squeaked up. "We are prepared to offer significant concessions, full membership in the Inner Council, exclusive trade rights, territorial guarantees. Tribute payments," added Harmony Node 77. "Mathematical analysis shows humans deserve compensation for economic losses." President Carter listened to their offers with no expression on her face. When they finished, she reached into her briefcase and pulled out a single sheet of paper. She slid it across the table to Velmash. "These are our terms for any future relationship. Non-negotiable." Velmash read the document and his face went pale. The other aliens leaned in to read over his shoulder. What they saw made them gasp in shock. The demands were breathtaking. Complete autonomy for all human colonies. Veto power over any Galaxy Council decisions that affected human space. massive reparations for economic losses during the withdrawal, formal recognition of humanity as an equal partner, not a subordinate member. These terms are unprecedented, Velmash whispered. Secretary Murphy leaned forward. So was cutting off diplomatic relations. You created this situation when you tried to steal our colony. These are the consequences. Warcast Throckmar slammed his armored fist on the table. You cannot expect the Galaxy Council to accept such humiliating terms. President Carter stood up calmly. Then this meeting is over. Enjoy trying to run your empire with broken ships and empty trade routes. The aliens panicked as she moved toward the door. Wait, Velmash called out. Perhaps we can negotiate some of these points. President Carter stopped and looked back. There is nothing to negotiate. Accept our terms completely or we stay isolated, your choice. But surely you understand that we need time to convince our people. Some of these demands will be very difficult to accept. You have 72 hours to give us your answer, President Carter said. After that, the offer is withdrawn permanently. As the human leaders left the room, the alien delegation sat in stunned silence. They had come to Earth expecting to negotiate from a position of strength. Instead, they had been handed an ultimatum by a species they had once considered subordinate. Outside the conference room, they could hear human soldiers marching in formation. The sound reminded them that humanity was no longer the peaceful partner. They remembered. The humans had become something harder and more dangerous. What do we do now? Pipwell squeaked nervously. Velmash stared at the paper in his hands. The terms were harsh, but the alternative was watching galactic civilization collapse completely. We go back and convince the Council to accept, he said quietly. Because we have no other choice. 3 months after humanity left the Galaxy Council, everything had changed. The alien delegation returned to a council chamber filled with broken dreams and desperate leaders. Velmash stood before his fellow aliens, holding the paper that contained humanity's demands. These are the human terms, he announced to the assembled representatives. Accept them all, or watch our civilization die. The debate that followed lasted for weeks. Species that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years struggled with the idea of treating humans as equals. But the math was simple and brutal. Warcast Throckmar spoke for the hegemony, his voice heavy with defeat. Our military fleets remain grounded. 60% of our ships cannot even start their engines. Without human technical support, we are defenseless. Trade Administrator Pipwell's fur had turned gray with stress. The Quillian Commerce Guild has lost 95% of its income. Our people face starvation within weeks. We must have the humans back. Even the proud Nixari had been humbled. Harmony Node 77's crystal form had lost its bright glow. Mathematical analysis confirms total economic collapse without human participation. Logic demands acceptance of their terms. One by one, every species voted to accept humanity's demands completely. There was no other choice. On Earth, President Carter stood before the Colonial Assembly once more. The representatives from 47 human worlds listened as she read the Galaxy Council's official surrender. The Galaxy Council has accepted our terms without any changes, she announced. The hall erupted in cheers and applause. But let this be a lesson to all of us. Respect is not given freely. Sometimes it must be demanded. President Carter looked out at the faces of her fellow humans. We showed the galaxy what happens when you push humanity too far. We proved that walking away can be the strongest negotiating position of all. Jake Morrison sat in the front row, no longer retired. He wore the uniform of senior ambassador and humanity's representative to the inner council. The same chamber where aliens had once dismissed human concerns now reserved the seat of honor for humanity's voice. Ambassador Morrison, President, Carter said with a smile, are you ready to return to the Galaxy Council? Jake stood up and his weathered face showed a satisfaction he had never felt before. Yes, ma'am, but this time they'll listen when humans speak. 2 weeks later, Jake Morrison walked back into the Galaxy Council chamber. The same room where he had been insulted and dismissed now looked very different. His chair was placed at the head of the table, marking humanity's new status as the senior partner in galactic affairs. The alien representatives rose to their feet when he entered. Velmash himself bowed deeply. Senior Ambassador Morrison, welcome back. The Galaxy Council is honored by your presence. Jake took his seat and looked around the table. The same aliens who had once treated him like a troublesome child now watched him with respect and fear. Let's get one thing clear from the start, Jake said calmly. Humanity didn't come back to be your servants. We came back as your partners, equal partners. Anyone who forgets that will find themselves dealing with empty space lanes and broken machines again. The aliens nodded eagerly. They had learned their lesson the hard way. Across the galaxy, human ships began moving again. Trade routes that had been empty for months filled with cargo vessels flying human flags. But now those ships carried human captains who demanded respect and fair payment for their services. Captain Lisa Bennett docked her cargo ship, the New Frontier, at a trade station in the Vega system. The alien harbor master, a nervous Vorthak, named Gektal, met her at the airlock with elaborate displays of respect. Captain Bennett, welcome back, Gektal said through his translator. We have prepared the finest docking bay for your vessel. Please let us know if you need anything at all. Lisa smiled as she watched the alien practically grovel before her. 3 months ago, the same harbor master had treated human captains like second-class citizens. Now he acted like she was visiting royalty. Just process our cargo quickly and pay the fees on time, Lisa said. We have other stops to make. Of course, Gektal said, his insect wings buzzing with nervousness. We have learned much from your absence. We will not make the, same mistakes again. As Lisa walked through the station, she saw other changes. Human technicians worked alongside alien crews, but now the aliens listened carefully to human advice. Human merchants negotiated from positions of strength, setting their own prices instead of accepting whatever the aliens offered. The galaxy had learned that when humans said enough, they meant it completely. On distant worlds, human colonies that had once faced alien interference now enjoyed complete freedom. The new treaties guaranteed that no alien authority could override human decisions about human worlds. Dr. Amy Rodriguez had returned to her research, but now she worked in a human-controlled facility with alien scientists as her assistants. The breakthrough medical research continued, but under human leadership and for human benefit first. Bill Watson had gone back to Kepler Station, but as the chief administrator, rather than just a technician. The alien workers followed his orders without question, grateful to have someone who actually understood the complex machinery. In the depths of space, Admiral Pete Sullivan patrolled the borders of human territory with the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled. No alien ship entered human space without permission. No alien voice told humans what to do with their own worlds. The new galactic order had begun, with humanity not as servants but as the leaders they were always meant to be. The aliens had learned too late that cooperation worked both ways. When you treated your partners with respect, they stayed and helped you succeed. When you treated them like servants, they left and took their knowledge with them. The galaxy would never make that mistake again,